This story starts off as just a minor accident, something so small that I thought it would be resolved quickly and without any drama. I was leaving a friend's house one night when I accidentally backed into a brick mailbox. My bike rack took the hit, sparing my car of any damage, but the mailbox was completely demolished. I thought, no big deal. That's why we have insurance, right? I did the responsible thing and went to the neighbor's house to explain what had happened to their mailbox. I gave the homeowner my name, phone number, and insurance information. All I got from him was his first name, Robert. From the moment Robert answered the door, something about him felt strange. He wasn't angry about the mailbox. Instead, he seemed overly friendly, almost eager. He started hitting on me immediately, making awkward comments about how pretty I was and repeatedly insisting that he'd like to feed me. I laughed it off at the time, uncomfortable, but figuring it was just a weird personality quirk. After all, I was just there to handle a simple insurance claim. On my way back to my mom's house, my parents are divorced and I was attending college out of state. I started receiving texts and calls from Robert. At first, it seemed like he wanted to avoid going through insurance. He sent me links to companies that would fix the mailbox for $500 and kept insisting it would be better for both of us to pay out of pocket. But then his messages started taking a darker turn. He demanded that I go on a date with him so I could, quote, give him the cash, and again, so he could feed me. I had no idea why he was so obsessed with the idea of feeding me, but it made my skin crawl. I politely declined everything, repeatedly telling him to contact my insurance, but the text didn't stop. By the second day, I was beyond annoyed and starting to feel a bit creeped out. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach dropped. When finally, I texted him, "Dude, leave me alone. This is harassment." I blocked his number, hoping that it would be the end of it. Big surprise, it wasn't. He called and texted from a different number this time, threatening to report the incident as a hit and run if I didn't respond to him. I'm in law school, and I know what a hit and run is. This wasn't that. I blocked the second number. Then came another number and a new message. "Do you want me to send video proof of the accident to your insurance?" That was the moment I snapped. I called him in a fit of rage, gripping my phone so hard that my nails practically dug a hole into the meaty part of my hand. He was laughing as he threatened me, demanding a date and trying to manipulate me into paying him in cash. I lost it. I screamed into the phone, "Don't contact me again, you fucking inbred piece of sh..." My dad overheard my outburst, and he wasn't happy. He thought I'd gone too far, saying I shouldn't have yelled at someone who just wanted a date. But my dad didn't know the full extent of what had been going on. The next day, Robert reached out yet again, claiming I had given him the wrong insurance policy number. I told him I hadn't. He accused me of lying and continued to push for cash payments. What terrified me most was that he somehow knew my mom's name, address, and phone number. When he asked me to confirm the information, I felt sick all over again. I told him to never message me again, and I blocked his number for the third or maybe fourth time. Then, early the next morning, I get another text. It said, "You're so beautiful, and yet so ugly at the same time. Don't take any risks. Stay on the good path. Goodbye." The mix of flattery, insult, and cryptic warning sent a chill down my spine to start the day. I blocked the fifth number. That night, at around midnight, I got the text that broke me. It said, "You up? I know where you live. Don't try to screw me over on insurance. You should have just gone on the date with me." This time, I didn't try to handle it alone. I showed the text to my dad, who was rightfully furious. He grabbed my phone and called Robert. When Robert answered, he had the audacity to laugh and say, Wow, I didn't know you were into me too. Do you want to come over? My dad, who is a big, intimidating guy, told him this was his final warning. He made it clear that we didn't care how Robert reported the accident, and that if he contacted me again, there would be consequences. Robert's response? He accused me of coming on to him, offering sex as payment, and inviting him to my house. He called me a horny bitch. My dad slammed the phone down, and we contacted the police immediately. The next day, I filed a protective order and alerted my insurance company. I thought that was it. But that evening, I got another text from yet another number. You shouldn't have involved the police. I blocked the 7th number and went to stay at my dad's house, knowing Robert didn't have that address. My dad was prepared for anything. He's a strong believer in the Second Amendment, and I felt safer with him than anywhere else. Late that night, the doorbell rang. My dad went to the door, peering through the peephole, and standing on the porch was Robert, holding a black trash bag in his hand. I froze as my dad opened the door just a crack, before stepping halfway out to confront him. Robert smiled and said he was just returning things that I had left at his house. I called the police as my dad shouted at him to leave. Robert began to argue, but when he saw how serious my dad was, he backed off. The police arrived just a few minutes later, before Robert had actually taken off, and then they arrested him. Inside the trash bag, they found lingerie, a knife, a tube of lip balm, and a fetish book by Dita Von Teese. I obviously hadn't left any of those things at his house. I'd never even been inside. The plot twist didn't end there, though. As it turned out, Robert didn't even own the house that he lived in. He was renting it. He was married. He was in the country illegally, and now facing deportation. While part of me felt guilty about his situation, the rest of me knew that I had narrowly escaped something far worse. I genuinely believe he had plans to hurt me. To what extent? I have no clue. I'll be headed back to school soon, and while I know that Robert is in my rear view now, this experience has given me a dose of just how weird and perverse some people in this world truly are. This man obviously got some amount of pleasure from being the level of sketchy that he was. While my hope is that he'd have to sit in some form of lockup for a while to think about his actions, maybe getting sent back to his home country is a worse fate than that. I don't know, but when I think back, I can't help but wonder if I was meant to plow into that mailbox. Whether it was my destiny or just poor reversing skills, I don't know that either. But if it in a roundabout way got a creep off the streets, then I'd happily hit 1,000 mailboxes. Hey guys, if you're into the content that we create, we've got a Patreon where you can support the show and get early access to new episodes before everyone else. Just head on over to patreon.com/Malevolent Mischief or check the link in the description and join our community today. This happened more than a couple years back. I was 13 at the time, and my younger brother was 11. My parents had to go out for the evening, and they decided to leave us home alone while they took our 6-year-old sister with them. It didn't seem like a big deal at the time. My brother and I were down in the basement where our video games were set up, happily playing Mario Kart on our Wii. My parents had told us to keep the home phone with us in case they needed to call and check in, so we kept it sitting right between us while we played. About an hour passed without incident when the phone suddenly started to ring. We looked at the caller ID, and it showed that it was our uncle calling. We figured it wasn't important, so we just let it ring. Now, normally, our phone would ring 5 times before stopping on its own. But this time, after the 3rd ring, it stopped. My brother didn't think much of it and just kept on playing. But I knew that the only way it would have stopped ringing early was if someone had picked it up. The problem was, we were home alone. That's when a wave of paranoia washed over me. I grabbed my brother and told him we needed to go upstairs to check it out. There were 2 other phones in the house. The phone in the kitchen that we both saw was still on its hook. That left only the phone on the 3rd floor in our parents' bedroom. We made our way through the kitchen, through the living room, and when we got to the stairs leading up, what we saw stopped us dead in our tracks. Standing at the top of our stairs was a man. He looked to be in his late 40s or maybe early 50s. I couldn't make out much more because as soon as we saw him, pure terror took over. My brother and I screamed and bolted out the front door as fast as we could. We didn't stop running until we reached our neighbor's house. We told them everything, the phone call, the man, and how he was just standing there inside of our home. Our neighbors immediately took us inside. They called the police, and then they called our parents. The police arrived quickly, and here's the part that still makes me scared today. The man never even attempted to leave the house. He was still there, standing silently. He didn't move or try to run. The police arrested him right there on the spot. When our parents came rushing home, they were horrified. My mom couldn't stop hugging us, repeating over and over how sorry she was for leaving us alone. My dad spent hours talking to the police, trying to figure out how the man had gotten inside and why he hadn't tried to leave. After that night, we were never left home alone again. From what I later heard, the man was placed in a mental hospital, but I don't know any other details about who he was or how he got inside. I'm an adult now, and I often can't stop thinking about what could have happened if my uncle hadn't called at that exact moment. That thought gives me the chills every time. That phone call may have just saved our lives. So I'm currently a sophomore in college, and the bar scene here is pretty big. Going out for the night to get special deals on alcohol so you can get plastered with your friends is kind of the go-to. Despite this, I'm not a huge drinker and don't enjoy it a lot because it tastes so bad and hurts my stomach. I do enjoy the company though, and often go just to be out with my friends or meet new people. A lot of the time, I'm called the dad of the group because I end up taking care of my friends. That's the prelude to what happened when I decided to go with them one Friday night. So we got all dressed up, pre-gaming a bit at my friend Q's apartment before we Ubered downtown to one of our pretty well-known college bars. After we got in, my friends immediately split off into tiny groups, combing over the club for girls they wanted to try their shot at spending the night with. This is going to make me sound weird, but one-night stands aren't really my thing, and I don't want to end up cock-blocking my friends. So instead of looking for girls, I usually find someone at the bar and make friends with them. I was chatting with some dude that was wearing a cowboy hat when eventually a girl approached me. She was pretty cute. Probably 5'6", dirty blonde hair, and eyes that I think were light brown. But they were so light they almost looked gold, which threw me off a bit. She asked if she could buy me a drink in exchange for being her friend for the night. And of course I accepted, because hey, that's what I came here for anyway, right? Anyway, she kept her word and we started talking to each other, and she introduced herself as Alexia, but to call her Alex. I asked her some basic stuff about if she came with friends, if she went to school here, etc., to which all the answers were no. That struck me as pretty odd, as it's honestly pretty unsafe to be in the downtown area alone as a girl at like 1 a.m. She said she wanted to hear about me though, and actually seemed pretty excited to listen. It felt like a really nice change of pace because I'm usually the one learning about other people, not the other way around. It also could have been the alcohol starting to take effect since, as stated before, I can be a pretty big lightweight. The whole time I was talking, She stared into my eyes and had this warm smile that made me feel so acknowledged, if that makes sense. I felt like she was enjoying her time as much as I was. And that just made me even happier because I thought it meant I had made a new friend. That was when her demeanor began to change though. She started to get kind of flirty and eventually asked if I'd like to go home with her. Like I said, I'm not really a one-night stand type of guy, and I explained I like to get to know people a little bit better before sleeping with them. I'm pretty sure I saw what I think was anger flash across her face, but it was quickly replaced with another smile, and she suggested just going home and watching a movie instead. I agreed and pulled out my phone to begin ordering an Uber, but she basically grabbed my wrist and began guiding me outside. I was confused, trying to ask if she was planning to drive after drinking, but she wouldn't really give me an answer. We eventually made it outside of the club, and she pointed to a black Honda Civic parked right in front of the club. That was when all the warning bells began to ring. I was pretty drunk at this point in the night, maybe 5 or 6 drinks deep, but I was still aware enough to see the red flags. She said she had come alone, but the lane the car was parked in was only for pickups, and I never saw her order an Uber. Somebody would have had to be driving the car. This was enough to make me uncomfortable, and I asked again if she was planning to drive. She said yes, as she continued walking me closer to it. I knew that was a lie, and as we got closer, my heart sank as I noticed the outline of 3 guys in the car. At that point, my adrenaline kicked in, and I yanked my hand away from her and said, "There's no way in hell I'm getting in that car with you." She tried begging me one more time, saying she really wanted to hook up and that she would let me do whatever I wanted. But I already had turned around to walk back to the bar. That's when she started cussing me out, practically screaming at the top of her lungs, as I walked back up to the bouncers to go back inside. I texted my friends what happened, and we all met back up and went home. It was obvious this girl was going to college bars, trying to get guys drunk before offering to sleep with them. That way she could get them in the car with 3 men to rob them or do God knows what else. I called my city's anonymous tip line and left a detailed description of the girl, car, and place where it happened. That night was a real wake-up call for me, and I'm thankful that despite being drunk, I was able to piece together what was happening before it was too late. Please remember to always be safe when going out with friends, especially when it's late at night or if alcohol is involved. But to Alexia, or more likely, whatever your name was, let's never meet again.